Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Again, for the second time today. Welcome back to Cannon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all over this world. It's the fourth segment, installment of the Cannon project. Some people ask me, where did you come up with all these names? I've got no idea. I'm still thinking about a nickname for you, Tim.
Oh, yeah. The bear in the square. That's an old kick back to my play. Actually, when I was playing, there was a guy. My nickname was Christy, and anyway, there was a big guy from Kilkenny that time, and he was Bear, and he was a big man. And but then as my career went on, the film came out. This is probably not completely correct, but about Daniel Day-Lewis film, and of course that was based around another Irish famous Christy, and people kind of fluctuated. That as my career was developing, I was veering. I was definitely. If you look in the film, he scores a penalty. He's carried up to kick a penalty, and he's a very famous artist, Christy Brown. He produced a lot of paintings and literature and stuff. But he scores this penalty while being left on the ground. And some of my teammates have said he was definitely better than you, Tim, because you'd have missed it.
So what was your nickname?
Christy.
Straight Christy.
Well, there was a guy playing for Kilkenny one time. He was called Christy Heffernan, and he was a big man. He was like, and I mean, I'm big, but he was big.
You know what, Tim? I think I might call you Daniel Day.
Yeah.
So no doubt, this one's going to be, see if we can knock this one out in 45 minutes. I know Tim has got to go shortly, but let's see. Yeah. We started together, so let's think if we can actually leave together. See the other side of this music intro. So yes, it's like we've got the Brady Bunch back together again, and this the Cannon project over here, the fourth installment. And before we get this one, make sure, guys, that you subscribe to the channel. Help us grow organically. If I can actually use that word. I'm not sure if that word exists on a podcast. But we've got James Rowe just around the corner in Amsterdam. We've got the Likely Lads just around the corner next door in Ireland. Yes, it's going to be an interesting one. Right, so the talk of the day, actually, for the last few days is this Newcastle Takeover. And on the morning show, I was asking my subscribers, is it just not a fact of sour grapes? Surely, if Arsenal had like a sugar daddy who's willing to throw money, irrespective of how he's got ill-gotten gains and billions, would we be up in arms, James? Would we be up in arms, or would we think, oh, thank you, we've got a sugar daddy who really cares about Arsenal, James? What's your thoughts, James?
Well, I think to answer your question, I think it would be mixed. I think everyone's got a different opinion, and I think it's very much a sign of the times. It really is. That's the level of money that the owners now have, and money being such a vital, important part in football. And I think back to my interview with Warren Barton, who signed for Newcastle under Kevin Keegan, and came so close to winning trophies for that club that he was said, played with some wonderful footballers, but they wanted to do it for the area. They wanted to do it for the people. And now the new generation of Newcastle United, whatever turn they take, they will want to do it for the people and want to do it for the surrounding area. But I think it's very much a slow process. It's not Championship Manager. It's not fantasy football. And you've also got to think about the personal lives of footballers. If you're living in a world city and you're living in a place in Rome, or you're living in Berlin, or you're living in Lisbon or Paris, it's very difficult to give up that city to go and play your trade in Newcastle, of all places, which has a great reputation as a city. There's no doubt about that. But I think people having grandeur of Mbappe, Salah, De Bruyne, all turning up at St James's Park, I really don't think it will happen in the short term. I think this process will be very much like Chelsea when Abramovich took over from Chelsea, where it's a club steeped in history, where you will see them making progress in the short term, buying very good footballers, and then going on to make progress in the long term. So I think people getting a little bit carried away as always, but very much a sign of the times, in my opinion.
Tim, your thoughts on this Newcastle situation? I mean, the PIF and the consortium, they're worth £320 billion, and that just dwarfs Man City.
And like the big thing here from look, we're all in. Everyone loves sport. Everyone loves team sport. The whole idea, I suppose, we're after a Summer Olympics. Watching people in the Paralympics and the Olympics participating just for the joy of it and just self motivation. But like this is money. This is like just beyond. Supposedly, I read today that the prince, whatever his name is, he has a picture on his yacht that's worth more than we're going to pay in his initial takeover of Newcastle. That's the level of money he's talking. Now, obviously, his investment, James made the point there. I think it's a very, very valid point, and a very, very valid point for Arsenal is that this will be a while to get going. There will be kinks along the way. He obviously, you're not like the real A-class players. They're not going to go to Newcastle. They're not going to go to Newcastle unless there's something very, very solid there. So he's going to initially have to put a management system in place. Going to initially have to get kind of players, maybe good, solid workmen like Premier League player, maybe one marquee kind or two marquee players, so to build themselves up the table. Like this is a kind of an interesting project to watch how it develops in a league now that has Man City and Chelsea, and we'll say, definitely, we'll just stop at those two for a minute. That has already has really rich sugar daddies already propping up two of the clubs, so we could nearly say that are competing for the title, and it's only the middle of October. So it's not going to be an overnight success. Now the reason and the point, just want to go back to make the point I made about Arsenal, is that Arsenal have Mikel Arteta. He's there for, I'm going to say 2 years. I'm sure I'm wrong. It's one way or the other by a number of months, but in that time, I am an Arteta fan. I would always say I kind of like what he does. Look, but the problem is he doesn't make the odd blunder. But look, everyone makes blunders. I suffer, and I feel in those 2 years he has brought. We know what the Arsenal team is. We know that Arsenal now, like the Crystal Palace next week. But Arsenal, like I can see Arsenal being top 7 or 8 after Christmas. I can see Arsenal pushing for that 5th spot if they got a bit of a run of things towards the end of the season, if they finish like they finished last season. So, and I do see a team that needs to be added to, but ultimately a good spine. So that, like, to get to that level from where Newcastle are will take a lot of money itself. Do you know, like Steve Bruce is going to be shoved out, supposedly kind of very quick, if you're to believe what you're reading in social media. Then they have to get some manager in. That manager now, of course, if they get Conte or to get one of these real high-profile managers, it'll be easier to bring them in. But ultimately, Newcastle is not London. Like, I mean, what always amazes me, like, and Terry will just try this, my experience of North London is based around my father. My father worked in North London. He was a bus driver literally down Holloway Road. So he was there. So, but he was only one person. So there was thousands, tens of thousands from Ireland, tens of thousands from all the other Celtic countries, tens of thousands from the West Indies, from Africa, India. You know, and they all want to go to London. That kind of metropolitan multiculturalism, that's what makes a city vibrant. That's what makes it a world city. The Londons, the Paris, the Romes. That's what has them looking at why people aspire to living there. Newcastle, and it's like I said, it's supposedly a great city. I've never Newcastle in my life, but it is a bit. So it's a bit parochial. Trying to get that, they'll need a big manager. They need to get him in and then see what he can manage. So it could be a couple of years before they really are challenging at the upper end of the table, I think.
Before I go to Eltel, Tim, but surely is it not worth the wait? I mean, if we're going to use Chelsea,
it's definitely worth the wait. But
they've won the Champions League twice in a decade, Tim.
Yeah. So look, it's definitely worth the. I'm not putting that down hard, but what I'm saying is Abramovich in Chelsea had a better starting point. You know what I mean? I think Chelsea. I think now, of course, he didn't have as much money. The money here is just irrelevant. Like they can just get whoever they want. I think Abramovich to bring players to London. I mean, Didier Drogba to me is just the epitome of what he came over. I remember I was one of the people that gave out about him feigning diving and about all this. Next thing I picked up the paper one day, Didier Drogba was after building a hospital in whatever country he came out. I think it was Ivory Coast, was he? He was the Ivory Coast. And next thing, they won that Champions League, the first one they won, and he was single-handedly the most vital component. So I tell you, I loved him for that. And that kind of, he came for the money, he wanted London, he was the marquee that got him over the line. Is that marquee player? Are they going to find him as easy to and as James highlights, to situate him, to place him in Newcastle? Now, of course, ultimately, one of the greatest players, I suppose, the Premier League of all time was a Newcastle player, was Alan Shearer, maybe they can unearth kind of quality English players from the Northern England that would be attracted back out there, that kind of stuff. It has really outside of Arsenal, I suppose historically, and I know Tell confirmed this now, but like the real strongholds of the initial football league were the northern clubs, that tradition is probably still there. So maybe they could get English players to get it, but the only problem is you pay well for English players. Sorry, Tell, I let you in there.
So,
Yeah.
your thoughts, Phil?
Well,
Money talks.
if you put it in the current context of London being the international capital of money laundering, it's very difficult to divorce the idea of what's going on money-wise and what's going on underhand, and why do people always want to invest in English clubs? And of course, that's very, very much a moot point, because nobody knows. But if you buy a club in Newcastle, there's nothing stopping you banking in London and doing whatever you fancy with it. But then while I was thinking about this, and of course financial fair play is now dead, officially buried, gone forever.
The wake tomorrow.
The wake is tomorrow, as Tim says. That's gone, and I believe that the woman who was brokering the deal and the Sheikh himself contacted Boris Johnson to smooth the pathway to this takeover. So my question is, who's gaining? Is it the Newcastle supporters and the EPL, or are we just a byproduct of somebody else making a ton of money? And there's several avenues that spring to mind. First of all, let's look forward. Looking forward, I'm still convinced that we're going to have a reincarnation of this thing we had about a year ago of a European Super League. And it looks to me like all the big money guys want to get in on that, because it'll be a license to print money. But then if you look backwards in time and you look at Sir Henry Norris, well, he was no saint. He did what people say the Arsenal owner shouldn't have done. The Arsenal owner moved St. Louis Rams St. Louis, as it's called, St. Louis Rams, from the city of St. Louis all the way across America to LA. And they said, oh, you can't do that. It's got it. I mean, his name is dirt in St. Louis. But actually, Sir Henry Norris bought Arsenal. There they were in Woolwich, and they were playing in Kent at the Manor Ground and so on. And he realised that if he moved Arsenal to more central London, he could set up a club which would have a bigger catchment area, which would be rivals to Tottenham, which meant twice a season at least you'd have sellout grounds. So he moved. At the time he owned Fulham, so he had to sell Fulham to somebody else, and then he moved Arsenal across. And he was well known for all kinds of skullduggery. We managed to get into Division 1 as it was called, even though I think we'd come 5th or 6th the previous season in Division 2. So he pulled all kinds of favours in on doing that. And when he finally left, which was in about 1927, I think. It was all over something dodgy, some financial dealing with money for a coach to take Arsenal to an away game. And the FA at the time saw some double dealing going on, and he was hoisted by his own petard. So right from the inception of the game, we have had double dealing. We have had people, oligarchs or people with property, with big money in property, who saw a chance to turn more than a penny. So yeah, we have to be careful not to suddenly say, well, the game has changed in essence, because it's always been about money. And it's all up until we moved stadiums, of course, it was always about how well how many people you could get in through the turnstile and how well you could market your club. And when Abramovich went to Chelsea, people may have forgotten he actually did go and knock on the door of Arsenal, and the Arsenal chairman at the time said, no, we don't want investment from abroad, whether it's America or Russia or anywhere. And he then went off, and Chelsea have won the Champions League twice, and we've won it diddly squat. So, you know, if you're going to play in a league where money makes a difference, then we have no complaints to make. What I would say finally is that there is still something wrong in a club being taken over by the sort of money men and losing its link with the area that it kind of came from. And this good man here beside me has been doing wonders, absolute miracles with the Scariff Ogonnelloe under-13 hurling team. And they are in a county final. This is a big thing. And the whole area is excited, and the mums and dads and the young people. And that's the joy of grassroots sport. And I think if we lose that contact and we just go to the nearest multi-billionaire that sort of buys a club, then somehow the joy of sport is diminished. And people, and I'm sure there are people who club hop, you know, oh, I'll go to this club, they seem to be doing well now. Oh, I'll go to that club. And of course, the people who are buying into club level and diamond level at Arsenal, many of them have no interest whatsoever in Arsenal, but they want to be seen at big events, big European games and so on. And I have seen that in Ireland, Tim, actually. I went to see a Clare semi-final. I was all the way down in Tralee in Kerry. And I remember myself and my sons got in the car at 5 o'clock one morning, went off on the train all the way up to Dublin. And we were chatting to an elderly gentleman who was a member of the GAA. And he said to me, he said, I love to see all hurling and sports in Ireland. I absolutely love it, he said. But before the big match, they always have a younger team playing, a minor team playing. And I sit out there and enjoy the match. And I'm always the only person sitting out enjoying the match. And all the rest are back in hospitality, because they're not really there for the sport. They're there for all the accoutrements that go with it. And to me, that is dangerous, and it's in so many sports. And I just, at the back of my mind, I am worried that with this massive influx, and in preparation, I had a quick look at the number of EPL clubs that are owned by local people. I think there's only Norwich and one other club that has that distinction, and all the rest. You feel our club. We've had a predator come in. That's what it feels like. It feels like a predator's come in and is using the fact that I'm from Highbury. I love Arsenal. And they said, well, we can make money out of you and thousands like you. And that doesn't feel right to me. And it seems wrong. And I think people are going to turn their back. I mean, if just like last thing, if you try and get a ticket, if you're a season ticket at Arsenal, it's about £800 for the worst view on a cold, rainy night, right? If you want a half decent view, you're talking about £1,500. And if you want to be dry and warm before and after the match, you're talking about £3,500 or £4,000 to go up to club level. Now that stops that. It's no longer what it was the final bit of history. In 1886, when Arsenal were formed, the government at the time, a year or two before, had decreed that instead of a 6-day working week, the working class people could knock off work at midday on a Saturday, and so they'd only be doing a 5.5-day week. And that's why around about the time that Arsenal were formed, you find most of the big league clubs were formed, because the guys were tumbling out of the factories, and they said, let's go to the nearest park and play football. And that's why in the north, where most of the factories were, that's where soccer started. So my final point is that, are we going to leave that behind, that kind of that link with your local area? Will you have it in the grassroots sports, but at elite level, you feel that that's gone? And in 10 or 20 years' time, Arsenal could be playing in LA or New York or wherever Stan Kroenke wants to play us.
James, do you know when I realised that football was really big business? It happened to me when I was living and working in Central America, in Costa Rica. And the school I was working at was the academy, just teaching English. They had a reception, and in the reception area, they had a big plasma TV. So the first weekend when I had to go there, looked at the TV, and they were showing a Premier League game, and it was Newcastle was playing. I thought, I'm like 8,000 miles away. I just arrived at the school, my first weekend working in the school, and they're showing on the screen, well, hand on heart, it was a Newcastle game. And that's when I realized football is literally big business. Oh. James, what does this really mean for Arsenal? This takeover of Newcastle. What is it going to mean for Arsenal?
Well, first and foremost, I think Tim and Terry both make some great points. I would argue that what Terry's already worried about is already here. I live in Amsterdam, and do you know the two football shirts that I see the most, apart from Ajax? Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City. There was a time where I was living on the outer edges of the city, and I moved closer to the city centre. And would you believe it, when Tottenham knocked Ajax out of the Champions League, all of a sudden in Amsterdam and in the metro and in the city centre, I'm surrounded by Tottenham shirts. I even had the inclination to go up to a couple of people and ask them in Dutch, are you from North London? Are you aware of Tottenham? But it's very much a fashion statement for some. You say about being in the school with a plasma screen. I remember being on a family holiday in Canada in '99 and going to the local sports shop and seeing a Manchester City shirt hanging up in the sports shop. But it's very much a sign of the time with fashion. If you delve deep into the history of the football clubs, the people who wear those shirts, they wouldn't be able to tell you anything at all. I remember in Amsterdam, I was in the city centre and I had an errand to run. And I went into a shop and there was a man wearing a Leicester City shirt. So I asked him in Dutch, are you a Leicester City fan? He said, oh, no, I don't understand Dutch. Can you speak in English? I was like, okay, are you a Leicester City fan? No, I'm not a Leicester City fan. I just like the shirt. And there is your answer. I just like the shirt, so I'm going to buy it. Nigeria, one of I think the biggest country in Africa, if memory serves me rightly, their World Cup shirt went on sale, sold out in a blink of an eye in Oxford Street in London. London is nowhere near Abuja. Nowhere near. And I always say to people, it's akin to writing the name of a religion on your T-shirt and then going out to do your errands or to do your chores and someone coming up to you and wanting to discuss that religion, for example, and you not being able to say anything. You just saying, oh, no, I just like it. It's just very much a sign of the times. And in answer to your question as well, where does it leave Arsenal? I'm not sure. We have a billionaire who, in comparison to the new owners of Newcastle, I think he has like 6.8 billion or something. But again, it's not Arsenal's priority. LA Rams are his priority for a brand spanking new stadium. Arsenal have brought an awful lot of players in, an awful lot of money, and then you see Arsenal Twitter, and then it's, oh, should we get Oxlade-Chamberlain back? Should we get Ramsey back? Should we get Jack back? We are not going to go anywhere if we keep living in the past. Jack Wilshere had injury problems. Ramsey did, as did Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Yeah.
But now Arsenal Twitter seem to want to roll out the red carpet. We are going through the motions as a football club, where some of our fans expect European football this season, anticipate a run for the Champions League. I can tell you now in October that is not happening. And it won't do us any harm to be out of Europe. People love to talk about Chelsea in the Champions League. Chelsea won the Champions League twice within a decade. Arsenal were in the Champions League for 22 years. We reached one final. So we had twice as much time as what they had, and we achieved nothing in comparison to what they did. People love to say that it's just about the money, but it's clearly not just about the money, is it? It's also about putting the right people in the right place and having no feeling of sentiment. Arsenal's sentiment to Wenger held the club back, but people don't want to talk about that. They'd rather talk about the process now. Well, I'll go on record and I'll say it once again. If we hadn't sacked Unai Emery, we'd be further on. He went on to win a European trophy with Villarreal, who have a population of 50,000 people. London has 9 million. And I think our fans have very much short memories. And I think some of them are proving that it's all about them. When you really need to look at the sign of the times in football, where even fervent football fans like myself and also reporters on football who deal with professional players and managers, the scary thing about this, and Tim and Terry make great points as well, as always on this podcast, but one thing you might not hear on Sky Sports or on BBC, but you will hear on Cannon Fodder, is that this will have a trickle-down effect. This will have a trickle-down effect within football, where that young professional scholar going in to sign his first professional contracts, his parents are in that very same room expecting their mortgage to be paid off. When it's a day where all that hard work for that player to sign his first professional terms, because of the money involved in the game, parents are now expecting the fruits of that young man's labour, when really it doesn't work like that.
But James, when the dust does eventually settle, won't there be questions about why did the Premier League sanction this deal, and has it made the Super League more something that's going to most inevitably happen now? James?
Yeah, I think yes on both counts. I think yes on both counts. And London is an international city. Terry makes the point about speaking to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. We're in a globalized market, but I don't think people in Jeddah, for example, and other places in Saudi Arabia, obviously they know London, but do they know Newcastle? And I just think that it's very much a sign of the times. I mean, one thing I can't quite fathom is that when I was a young man at school and working life and emigrating to the Netherlands, I was always told by family, friends and education sector at school, do your best, work hard, give your all. And all of a sudden, you're growing up through life and you're surrounded by a society on a news plane where all of a sudden there's more billionaires than you can count. When I was a young teenager, nobody had ever heard of a billionaire. It was something out of a cartoon strip. Yeah. And then now it's very much a sign of the times, where you've got people in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, food banks as well, which is absolutely abhorrent. But yet all of a sudden there's an international conglomerate can buy a football club. And as Terry says, it's about the local area. But I don't think we can ever get back to that point now. If we've gone from the Americanization where we never used to have names on the back of shirts, where that's where it all started. Names on the back of shirts, and then because they looked at the NFL when coming up with their initial ideas. David Dean said himself he remembers seeing it in an NFL game, and he thought, "Oh, wouldn't that be great for the English Premier League to have such a thing?" And I mean, you see the unveiling videos now, where we used to have a photo of the manager of a player in the shirt, and that was enough. And now there's like mini documentaries of who can make the best unveiling video, and it's. I think the sport is starting to eat itself. And as someone who's loved the game for more than 30 years, and someone who's reported on the game for more than 5 years, and has dealt with players and managers, the thing that's so important, which I hope people watching this podcast can grasp, is that at the highest level, the most smallest and minute details make the biggest difference. It's not necessarily about the size of the pay packet. It's about the ability to put a good team together, and that's the thing that Newcastle United are going to have to do now. They're going to have to put a good team together, and that will take time.
Yeah. Tim, very quickly to you. Won't there be questions as to why the Premier League, sanctioned this?
Well, I think
what would it mean for the Super League? Is it more inevitable now? The Super League?
But the fun. Well, I would agree. Yeah, the question. I think Terry has addressed the question. Money. If you have this regime was associated with the death of a journalist. I think that speaks enough for. So there's no integrity in any part of this issue. There's no. So in other words, they have been proven ruthless. They are. You're not dealing with. This is the underbelly of society. Saudi Arabia has its rights towards women, its rights toward the gay community, the LGBTQ community, all terrible responses to all those questions when they're asked. But ultimately, the Super League. Now, the interesting thing about the Super League is that the Super League is going to be the Premier League, I think, because I think Real Madrid are in trouble, Juventus are in trouble. I think just some of the main players that were they are kind of in major trouble themselves. So they need the Super League. But I remember, do you remember the Super League? It was that week. It was launched. And next thing about Tuesday, it started kind of maybe Sunday evening. Next thing Tuesday evening, Liverpool had pulled out. They had said, no, we don't want nothing to do with this. Yeah. And next thing, Chelsea went. And they were kind of much saying it's grand, but if it's going to upset things too much, we don't want protests. We don't want this. And they put up these kind of false apologies and the old sackcloth and ashes kind of mentality. And we'll suffer. We misjudged the awful misstatements. This is an awful decision and we take full responsibility. So maybe the Super League in itself, I wonder, the fact, Bayern, remember, weren't in it. So if the Italian clubs and the Spanish clubs are kind of, your man, I saw a bit of it last night, the guy that was playing for Spain, the 17-year-old, he's in the Barcelona first team now. And no matter how good he was 10 years ago, he wouldn't be next to near the Barcelona first team. But now they have to go back to their own coaching and they have to bring people in and they have to get them in because that's the only real stream of talent they have. Now, just to contradict something I said earlier, the whole Newcastle thing, if they do get, I still believe, it'll take a lot of work to get them up there. But I read something last week and they were talking about Jack Grealish and his move to Man City. And people said, when Jack Grealish was in Aston Villa, he was the greatest. No, he was the best player in the Premier League. He was a marquee player. He was pulling all the strings. He really was the star of the show, right? There's no question mark that he was the main man. But now, although still playing well, but he's not the central figure in Man City. And someone said, no, there's only one central figure in Man City, and that's Pep. and there's only one central figure in Liverpool, and that's Klopp and Tuchel, and in Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel. But like, so the thing is, if Newcastle can get the right manager, you know, their phone book, maybe they won't get the first five. Maybe the Haalands and the Mbappes and Griezmann, they won't come there. But they definitely won't come there until they're guaranteed however European football has been played out. But the next 10 numbers in those top managers' phone books is well worth having. They'll get lads up. This is big contracts. You'll be competing in the Premier League. You'll be playing Man City. You're playing Chelsea. Playing Arsenal. It's easy to sell it. It's easy when you think about it. A good manager, but the one thing I always remember. Look, I remember when Asprilla went to Newcastle. And I know, like, it's a bit nostalgic now to have imagined now, but Asprilla. Do you remember they had David Ginola, they had Asprilla, then Beers, they had all these players, and like they have a unique ability to slightly overperform or kind of shoot themselves in the foot. So I think it could be like a little bit of a soap opera a while to get people going, to get them up, but. Ultimately, they have the money. They can make the mistakes. They will get there, but it will take a couple of seasons to get there. In answer to your question, the Super League, I felt the Super League, whatever number of clubs would say the three Spanish clubs, the Juventus, the two Milan clubs, Paris Saint-Germain. I think all the rest were the English clubs. Some of those clubs are in trouble themselves. Like the Super League. It might be taking place, but it might be taking place with those clubs. Now, it'll be interesting to see will those participants still be involved. So the Super League as an entity will possibly, but the form when it crystallizes will not be the form that people were protesting outside Arsenal about last year. It'd probably be slightly maybe more democratic version. They'll have a bit more entrance and exit, and they'll soften it. But it probably will. It will come, but it'll be maybe a more rose-tinted view, or a more how to say. It'll be a version that's more pleasing to the eye than the initial model would be my understanding.
Yeah. Actually, Tim's just given me an opportunity to sidetrack slightly on a crazy story that is absolutely true. As soon as you mentioned Asprilla, I was at the Arsenal match against Newcastle. Kevin Keegan was the manager, and I was in a band in London. We were doing gigs in different places, and I said, right, I'm going to have to leave about 4:20, about 20 minutes early to get home. I only live 7 minutes walk from Arsenal Stadium. Get all the gear in the car and go off and play somewhere. So anyway, I thought, when shall I go? And I'm trying to time it so that I don't miss the best part of the match. And by this point, Arsenal were in the lead by 2 or 3 goals, and Kevin Keegan, pulled off Asprilla and off he went. And I thought, perfect, I'll go now. So I was in the clock end, and I made my way back through the crowd and out. And normally outside a stadium at that time of day, you see a lot of paper blowing away. People that sell nuts are still standing there and whatever. There's very few people around. And the next minute, I'm going along by Conewood Street, which faces the sort of entrance to the Marble Hall. And out comes Asprilla. And he's got trousers on, but he's still got the sort of top on him. And I thought to myself, that can't be him. And 1 or 2 people that were standing around were going, all right, Asprilla. And he was waving. And I'm working out in my head, in the time he's taken to get off the pitch, he hasn't even bothered to shower. But the crazy thing was, he then goes right next to me, and I waved to him. He said hello. And then there was a bloke who I hadn't spotted before on a motorbike. And Asprilla got on behind him, grabbed him round the waist, and they headed off towards the Arsenal Fish Bar up at the top of Blackstock Road. And I thought, I don't believe that. And the following day in the papers, Asprilla was in big trouble because Kevin Keegan said, when I sub you, you don't just go off and see your mates. You wait for me in the dressing room. So it really was him.
He was like that time. They were unbelievable. Do you remember David Ginola, Les Ferdinand? They were just unbelievable. And then I remember home, and anyway, I have a very complicated relationship with Man United because of Roy Keane and all this. And anyway, but Dennis Irwin was there, and we were kind of hoping they'd win for him, but we were hoping Roy Keane would be bit. But anyway, but I remember at that time that he kept buying these attacking players, and the whole world and its mother would have said, "Buy a good centre half. Stop conceding goals." But anyway, they were the original like Coronation Street EastEnders show. Like, it was melodrama.
So a quick question to you before we go into live chat. Tel, do you think the fan base, Arsenal's fan base, do you think this might kind of get the juices flowing, and we might be thinking, why can't we have an owner like PIF? Do you think?
Well, you said earlier, would the fans at Arsenal accept one of these PIF guys? Somebody with a very, very dodgy CV. Yeah. Let's put it like that. Yeah. And I think the fan base would. I'd like to think that the fan base would say no. This is a step too far. But we don't live in that world. I don't want to be too political about this, but Britain are selling arms to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has gone in hard on Yemen. So it doesn't take the brain of Britain to sort of work out that there's something amiss in this deal, and it should never have been allowed through. Yeah. So, my question is, when is the FA going to stand up and say enough is enough? This person who wants to buy the club, whether it's through what looks like a shell company, don't they? They're like the PIF, whatever they call themselves. At the end of the day, we will be seen to be endorsing that kind of behaviour. And as Tim mentioned earlier, there was the guy that went into the embassy to get something signed so he could get married, and the guy was never seen again. So, there are serious questions that really the FA or the EPL, somebody somewhere ought to be saying, where are we going to draw the line? And at the moment, we aren't drawing any lines.
Before going to the live chat, I know there's only been a few comments on the live chat. I want to give James an opportunity to tell us about, he's reached a milestone. James.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, today was my 50th interview on the Secret Footballer website since we started last November, and delighted to have reached such a milestone. It's been wonderful to interview the likes of Alan Smith, Arne Friedrich, John Solarco, Mark Warburton, among others. And it's been great as well to treat every professional player and manager the same. Everyone's got a story to tell. It will not be too far off what will be 400 interviews since I started out on this journey in 2016, and just delighted to have reached such a milestone for the Secret Footballer website, who are the same publisher as the books, and they could have chosen anybody, but they got in touch with me that November day, having read my interviews for the likes of World Football Index in the past, and must have made quite an impression. But it's a real privilege to be able to interview professional players and managers in English, Dutch and Spanish, but also to help fans realise that football is it's a world game. It's not about who costs the most money. It's always about the human element of footballers as well, also from the women's game. And the best is very much still yet to come.
Brilliant, nice one, and actually congratulations from the Canada Point TV family.
Absolutely,
congratulations. Well done, James. Well done. Very good. Keep up the good work.
Actually, I forgot to mention this on the. Actually, I did mention it. Charlie George celebrated his 71st birthday yesterday. Youngsters won't know who I'm talking about, but listen, go on Google, type in Charlie George, and you get a quick history lesson there on Arsenal. So happy 71st birthday to Charlie George, who I met actually at the Emirates doing the stadium tour with my brother. Very, very, very funny guy. Very, very funny guy. Let's go into the live chat. I guess maybe just one time because there's only been a few comments. Ashley D, who's the moderator for this evening show, says, "Hey up, Gooners." Then English Conversation Club said, "Isn't it worth the wait? Look at Chelsea winning the Champions League twice in a decade, Tim."
Yeah. Oh, look, there's no doubt about it. if you want success, and like, look, we had the Daniel Ek thing earlier, and that's probably still there. And there was even people kind of giving out about the morality of Spotify. Believe me, Spotify is crystal clear, and is if you compare it to what's taken over in Newcastle. But no, I don't mean to diminish any of these artists, their achievements either. But like, no, look, ultimately, Arsenal are in a place where, as Terry said, they have a billionaire, but he's not for Joe. He's like the crowd, the Glazers at United, and he's all those sort of things. He's in this for the money. It's profit making. While now Abramovich, Man City, and now Newcastle, it's a play project for them. As someone said, one time Bond villains wanted to take over the world. Now they're just going to win the Premier League.
Love it.
That's a good one. So but that's the way it is. Like, so unfortunately, but it could be like, I still think, like, I'm fascinated with like, James made the most valid point there of all, is that ultimately it's about who's he going to get in. And let's say gets Conte. Now that'd be a big get. So that would be a colossal. They won't get Conte. I don't think they'll get Conte, to be honest about it. We just say they will. But like, he's gone in then against the Man City and Chelsea teams at the moment. Look like to me they are playing in a league of their own. Like, literally, it's only they're fighting. Maybe Liverpool on a good day, but no, not really. I think it's between them for the Premier League, right? And they are professional setups with managers that are very kind of on their game. They're ambitious. They want to succeed. Like, so if you're a manager that's going to, no matter who you get in Newcastle, that's who he's to take on. So that's what so ultimately, and like the player depth. Now James knows an awful more about this than I do, obviously. But like, that real marquee players, to get those into your club. Like, look, we had this thing recently. PSG, who would have been? Oh, PSG played Man City. That was a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about all the free transfers that PSG had got. But sure, the wages these people were on were unbelievable. So in other words, that kind of player, getting those in, like taking on a forward line, just say we're taking the PSG forward line. Isn't it? It's Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar up front, isn't it? I mean, it'll take a lot of organising to beat those. And if you go to the big, like this whole, like, some Man City to me are kind of an interesting thing in that they've been so close to winning this Champions League now, but they can't seem to do it. And it's wondering now, and I think we suffer a bit from this as well in Arsenal, is that, do they need another dimension? Do they need to get away? Is Pep's kind of death by 1,000 cuts, we'll call it, this tiki-taka, creating space? Like, ultimately, it has failed. Like, it has failed to win the Champions League for them. Now they've had brilliant success in the Premier League, and they'll be very close to it again this year. But ultimately, Newcastle are going into that upper tier, that upper stratosphere of the Premier League, is as competitive as anything they would come across in Europe. So for Newcastle to win a Premier League, I'd say is at a minimum a 5-year project. I think James would probably quantify it better than I would. He'd better he'd better say 4, 3, or 10 or whatever. But in my eyes, it's 5 years, because it'd take 2 or 3 years to consolidate, to get the players in, the management in, and then to really push. And you're talking about taking on the cream. The best players in the world now are in the Premier League. The best players in the world. So that's my belief, is that for Newcastle to be successful, to win a Premier League, and then ultimately maybe go on to it, it'll take a lot of work. Is my opinion.
Magic goes on to say that whole Newcastle situation and all these billionaire buying teams in the EPL, ship sailed long ago when the Premier League allowed Abramovich to buy Chelsea. There should have been a stop to it back then. And then the Conversation Club says, agreed, Majid, you can't stop it now. What else is there? We have Majid coming back and saying, it all comes down to money. Morals go out the window when money is involved. The funny thing is, the likes of Man City and Chelsea have the audacity to complain and try to stop the Newcastle owners when they themselves, for the past 15 years have been financial doping. Tell, Godfather.
It is. I mean, our old friend Arsene Wenger called it exactly right. It is financial doping that's going on. And okay, it's always been a fact that a club would have to have a big fan base and would have to have plenty of people coming through the turnstiles. And nowadays, you'd say yes, they can sell their soul to Sky and BT and so on. But now none of that matters, because financial fair play is dead. Yeah. They can get in the biggest money owners. I mean, these guys that are buying, or the guy that's buying Newcastle is in a different league financially. There's nobody. I think the Arsenal guy has got 8 billion. This guy's got nearly 200 billion. Yeah. I mean, it's a different league. It's crazy.
Okay. It's not only about money and spending, it's about management too. We already have a billionaire. Even if a richer owner comes in, it won't matter if the management of the club is bad. James.
Well, I think it starts at the top. You know, when Arsenal have an owner where his priority is the LA Rams, you know, until he relinquishes that will always be the situation we find ourselves in. People love to talk about the money Arsenal have spent, but the scouting, the looking at players, the acceptance of players, the understanding of the game. I mean, I see Arsenal Twitter sometimes, and I think, what game are these fans watching, where they seem to lavish positivity on players when in the real world it's very much the collective is the most important thing. The collective of a team working together. Leicester showed that in 2016. Villarreal showed that winning the Europa League. You know, the collective will always beat the sum of its individual parts, but I think it's very much a sign of the times. And you see how, you know, with people love to talk about the facts, Premier League based, but what about the old Division 1? Nobody seems to want to talk about that anymore. When a strange result comes up, you'll always see, for example, Norwich win at Burnley for the first time since 1974. You won't see those facts anymore. All you'll see in such an event is Norwich win at Burnley for the first time in the Premier League. And since 1888, there's a history there, there's a timeline there, and that also needs to be respected. So it really is very much a sign of the times.
Ola Donkey says we must keep up the arms race and have the Qataris take over Arsenal. The Bundesliga has a better system for football, Tim.
Yeah, well, I think the Bundesliga. You see, the Bundesliga. Now, I don't think the ownership rights, but they have the membership have 50%, haven't they? Yeah. They have a 50% vote.
Plus one.
Plus one, actually. Yes, exactly. Yeah, bang on. Sorry. Yeah. So they have, so in other words, they can't get it through. That's the reason they want the like Bayern aren't saints. Don't be under any doubt. But Bayern didn't go into the Super League because they couldn't go in. They wouldn't get through the board. Yeah. Simple as that. And that was the way of it. And ultimately, that German model is better. And I must remember, the German national team, how many times have they pulled it off? Once in every... I'll be here at home. I have a teenager. He's mad into football. He's into... Look, he should be on this thing, not me. But he should be... He's addicted to football. And he'd be talking about World Cups and European Championships, and he'd name, will say, Italia 90 or some other, whatever it is, and who won that? And I'd be kind of thinking, well, it wasn't one of the big teams, it must have been Germany. And like Germany's base level is so high that if the standard slips at all, they win it. That's the way it is. And they're continuously producing players. And they have players, that Bundesliga, is producing players for the German national team. You know what I mean? It's while the English Premier League is actually, it's nearly eating the English national team. You know what I mean? Really, you talk about the best players in the English Premier League. You know, Harry Kane maybe come into it, Jack Grealish, but you'd have a lot of names named, and they wouldn't have been English. You know what I mean? There'd be a lot of French. So a lot of players, I mean, when I was a child in the 80s, we were coming up and we always consider ourselves, oh, we're Irish, we're over there, we're the foreign player, Joe, and we always be following Joe Aston Villa. I remember I was a gigantic Aston Villa fan there because there were about 4 or 5 Irish players playing in the League Cup final one time, and we all loved them. Aston Villa, like an Irish player, firstly, an Irish player would get into Aston Villa now, and secondly, the foreign players are from countries in Africa that the probably Aston Villa supporters or Arsenal supporters, for that matter, couldn't probably find on a map. You know what I mean? It really is a global game. James has touched on that, and it is, which is a good thing, by the way. I think it is a good thing because ultimately, you know, we all remember being Aspria. Aspria, of course, was like, I don't think there'll ever be another Aspria. There definitely won't be a guy going off for fish and chips and back and motorbike. But you know, that whole kind of, when he came to the Premier League that time, people were just like unbelievable. I mean, people thought Cantona and Ginola, they thought they were a bit kind of how to say, they had a certain je ne sais quoi, to use the term, but like this guy was out of this world from South America, and he going around. I remember he used to be dressed in the black and the gloves, and he could nearly make the ball talk. Like, I mean, and it would instill in you a love of the game. Like, ultimately, I watched the European, this year, the Euros, that's what same as everyone else did, and that Italian captain who's still playing, by the way. I thought he retired. He came on the other night. He's still playing. He's 37 years of age or something, and he instilled in me this summer a new love of football. He was grinding it out. He was playing against lads that were half his age, twice as fit as him. Their carb levels, their oxygen levels, their step, their mobility, every statistic known to man, they were better. But he had made up his mind that he was going down fighting, and by God, that's what happened. And now, look, from an Arsenal point of view, what he did to Saka was terrible. He pulled him back, but like that was it. He had made up. He knew coming out that tunnel that day, this is my last chance. He said, "This is my last chance." And you must remember, which everyone should always remember. You should all. And James has made a point about this. You should always know your history. In Italy, Baresi, Cannavaro, Maldini. To be an A-class defender is royalty. That is where, and he said, I'm on the footsteps of that. I might have been an average player, but now I'm on the footsteps of that. And he'll give it. So people like that would always instill you. And if you're ever feeling low and you're feeling, you know, I'm just not loving it anymore and football is letting me down, type into YouTube, Leicester City Premier League presentation 2016. What's the opera singer was singing as it would reinvigorate your life. To see these people where they came from to win that Premier League, it just proves a good manager and good players can achieve an awful lot, you know, and a bit of imagination. I still feel that, like, the tiki-taka, okay, it was great, but like what Liverpool are doing is just a reversion of a press from like 20 years ago. In other words, they haven't really done anything. I don't think what Liverpool are doing is terribly novel in the sense, but they're just very good at it. You know what I mean? Is my belief. Sorry,
James, did you want to say something, James? I can see. Did you want to say something, James?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish from my point of view before we started recording tonight. Tim and Terry mentioned the other CR7, and Tim touched on Aston Villa. I'm sure he knows this, but I just wanted to let him know, just in case he didn't. Do you know what the link is between Callum Robinson and Aston Villa, Tim?
No, go on. No,
Callum Robinson spent time in the youth setup at Aston Villa.
Oh, is that it? Oh, yeah. And he's.
I spoke to Lewis. Well, I spoke to Lewis Kinsella a couple of years back, who, when I spoke to him, he was at Aldershot Town. And they spent time together in the youth setup at Aston Villa. So when I heard you say about Callum Robinson and when I heard you say about Aston Villa, I thought it'd be a nice way to link that in as with all my appearances on Cannon Fodder for the people watching. Like with my own interviews with players and managers, they always find out something they didn't know before. And he had a great spell at Sheffield United as well. You know, I think the timing of playing under Chris Wilder as well, and he's proving the benefits. And so Callum Robinson, Aston Villa played a part in his development as a professional footballer.
Oh,
okay. Let me go into the live chat. Just read off all these last comments here. Ashley D has said, the thing is, you now need these multi-billionaires because of the huge and ever-increasing wage demands. And then Majid response is, but Ashley D, it's because of these billionaires and their big spending and giving these huge wages to these players in the first place, which has inflated the transfer and wage market.
Yeah.
GP says, very true. Unfortunately, the clubs have opened Pandora's box. You know, Pandora's box can never be closed back.
Yeah.
And it can't be closed regarding these ridiculous wages. And Majid says, FIFA and the other football associations need to come together and introduce wage and transfer caps in football in all around the world. We'll soon see a 2 million plus transfer if this goes on.
Yeah, listen, I've got a perfect Arsenal link for this. Back before I supported Arsenal, they had a guy called George Eastham that they bought from Newcastle. So we're back to Newcastle again.
Yeah.
And George Eastham took Newcastle to court because at the time there existed in Britain or in England a wage cap on soccer players. And George Eastham brought Newcastle to court, Newcastle FC to court, won the case, and then he was persona non grata, of course, at Newcastle, and Arsenal signed him. And I have been thinking, Reece, it's interesting that this has come up, that we've now gone full circle where actually these wages are destroying the game.
Yeah.
And it means, as I said earlier, if you want to go and watch Arsenal, you have to have a lot of spare money available just to see 1 or 2 matches each season. That can't be right. So maybe we need to find a way of cooling this sort of market, because we've got players there who earn more in a week than most people do in a whole lifetime of working. It's mad.
Yeah. Pandora's box, you can't close it. It's out there now. It's out there.
Yeah.
In the Bundesliga, the football clubs will remain clubs while the Premier League is turning clubs into franchises. And the last comment in live chat says that, but even in Germany, football, there is billionaires. RB Leipzig has a billionaire owner, and that is how they have been successful in recent years. Guys, we've come to an end on this segment here on the Canon project. Wonderful stuff. I thought a little bit, persona non gratis. I just like in here getting a footballing lesson from you guys. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. James, any interviews up and coming, James?
Yeah, a fair few. Today, Harry Toffolo was published, who plays as a defender for Huddersfield Town. Upcoming interviews include the likes of Chris Luchetti, who played for, among others, Preston and Bury, Richard Snakers, who Bolton and West Bromwich Albion fans will know, plus a few surprises as well. As I say, we are now over reached the threshold of 50 interviews, and I'll be able to eventually publish 100 for the Secret Footballer website, which is fantastic. But I always say that every interview, the next interview is always the most important one. And people often say to me about, the favourite interview or the one that's been the best. But I think for me, the proudest thing is in what is soon to be over 400 interviews, that you treat everybody the same, and you let the audience know that these are players that are giving their lives to be professionals. And there's been some great points particularly made tonight, and you can go off in all different kind of tandems about the as Terry was saying, the wages that some players earn more than people working normal jobs in a lifetime. And pretty sooner or later those chickens will come home to roost, because if you've got worldwide problems such as a pandemic, such as energy crisis and climate crisis, there's only so much a normal person can take in that respect. And I think it will signal the dying ends and the dying embers of the sport itself, in my opinion.
Yeah. I just got a quick question just to Tim and Tel. Do you think it might take for football to go bust before anything else can happen, because I'm not going to rely on the Premier League or or the FA to do anything right anytime soon. But do you think football might need to go bust?
I don't think it can go bust, because these people who actually own the state they own the state bank, so they can just keep printing money. So I don't see football going bust. But what I do see is that fans are going to have to be very careful about where they spend their money. And I must say, so sad that when I was a young fella growing up, my friends would phone me up, Terry, would you like to go and see QPR against Liverpool? And we'd go down to Queen's Park Rangers. Would you like to see Fulham versus Tottenham? And we'd go down to Fulham. Nowadays, that's impossible, because tickets are so hard to get, because they're so incredibly expensive, and they're gobbled up. I was in club level a couple of years ago, and I met a good friend of mine, Pete, and I said, "Oh, Pete, I didn't know you could afford club level. It's expensive." He said, "No, it's. I work as a quantity surveyor for a big company based in Canary Wharf, so I'm not paying a penny here." So you've now got big business buying all the best things that you could possibly want, and it's like a rich man's playground. I would, in a way, it would be good if football went bust, but I think the danger is the interest will begin to dribble away, and people will find sports that don't cost them so much. For instance, on Saturday, Tim is a coach for this fantastic team. They're playing in a county final. There'll be lots of parents there.
Oh,
Tim. Yeah. You know, and it's just so exciting. And I've already said to myself, don't keep screaming too much, because the ref might come over and book you. But you know, it's so exciting, and these young lads are wonderful to work with. You know, as you know, you and I have worked with children for a lot of our lives. These young men really are wonderful to work with. They give it their all, and they are proud to represent both Scariff and Ogonnelloe, two neighbouring places. And when's the last time you saw a player from even London or Islington, you know, pulling on an Arsenal shirt? Those days are going and gone, you know, and I think it's a real shame. So I think you will feel, you know, over the years, I think you will see a diminution of the sort of soccer league as a spectacle, because as a game, I don't think it's quite as exciting as it could be.
Yeah, I would be totally with that. That I think actually the whole tiki-taka, a minute passes or 1,000, and this kind of you know, and no shooting unless you're nearly in. You know, this XG there, you see their match of the day, and I think they've kind of nullified it. But on the other side, I think football was described one time as opium for the masses, and it will always be that. There'll always be, like I remember someone said one time in our sport that when you hit a ball with a hurling first time, that it reverberates up your arm and into your soul. And I think when you kick a ball for the first time, or you get that first touch, it goes into people's soul. It captures their childhood. Everyone kind of remembers, you know, that one great player that you possibly felt, you know, maybe. And often, of course, for countries, smaller countries, there's always that context of, oh, he never got the recognition he deserved, or there's that big performance. So I think football will always be alive. What version professional football will take will be very interesting. But it's hard to believe that the Premier League is, like, obviously, I think it's the richest league in the world now. But, like, I think if you were to talk about per capita and actual turnover, the Championship is in the top 5 or 6. You know what I mean? So, no, obviously you have the Premier League, La Liga. James now will have all these much better than I will. But, like, La Liga, Serie A, all these. But then once you get down to numbers 5 or 6, the Championship is the next one up. So, in other words, it is, as the money involved in that league is at a level comparable with like some countries that have participants in the Champions League. You know what I mean? That's how much money there is. And I often remember here, we're very rural here now, where my cemetery area. We're looking out the lake actually, but it's quite rural here. And I remember in 2001, you remember there was the foot and mouth scandal, and so the whole of Ireland came to a standstill because our national the farming was in crisis if this disease got in. And I remember there was soccer matches on, Premier League matches on in England that weekend, and there was a request kind of to and froing, would England be stopping those matches? And they said no, that the Premier League was worth more than the potential damage they would do to their to the agricultural sector. So it is like, it mightn't be football, it could be entertainment, but it will always, every 10-year-old wants to be AUBAMEYANG or Mo Salah, or they want to be that player. They see that bit of skill. I mean, wouldn't you watch Maradona? Like I to this day, when Maradona comes on the television, I always sit down and watch it because it's something just, I don't know. He's like he'll never be seen again. Like, do you know what I mean? It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and just one quick Arsenal one. When Bergkamp scored that miraculous goal against Newcastle, I still watch that.
Yeah,
and he has me going the wrong way every time. I think he's going this way, and even though I know which way he's going, he still tricks me.
Yes.
What a goal!
And another thing, you talk about athleticism. Like, everyone remembers Bergkamp, this great touch. Do you remember he gave that ball out to was it Henry or Perez?
Perez.
He started off in his own half, and he gave the ball out and went the length of the field. And then, as anyone that's ever played sport will tell you, to control a ball might be easy, but to control a ball when your lungs are pretty much exploding after running maybe 50 meters at full speed, it's unbelievable. Like, that is magic.
Yeah.
Bergkamp was magic. There's some players that just have that, and that's the reason football will always, I think, live on with like this professional football. What will be version of that? It'll be interesting. And as Terry has said, it probably lost touch with their base. Like, there won't be a Newcastle player hardly on that team.
No.
When they win that Premier League in the year 2026, there won't be a Newcastle player in the first 11. I bet you.
But Tim, isn't that the dichotomy? Because we've been talking about the influx of billions of pounds, and maybe in 4 to 5 years, Newcastle might be a force to be reckoned with. Most likely, you won't, like you say, you won't have any players from the local area playing Newcastle. So it's to have seen a Dennis Bergkamp play. It would have been wonderful to see. I'm sure maybe Messi play in the Premier League, but football, the Pandora's box. There's no way we can close the box back.
And it'll be interesting to see. And the fact there is so many, like, Liverpool are American owned, Arsenal are American owned. They know how the franchises work, and like, the jerseys, the day out. I went to a baseball match one time. Actually, I went to two. I was in America one time, and I went to Yankee Stadium. If you're ever in America, go to Yankee Stadium. It's something unbelievable. But it is that. It's beers, hot dogs, this kind of big, and it's a sport that is meant for entertainment because it's the big hit of the ball or this quick throw. It's all this sort of stuff. It's high entertainment. Then when your team is defending, you can get down and get a beer now. You know what I mean? It allows you to move away, and that's what soccer. That is definitely the world, or the franchise culture could definitely come in. I feel. Now, James, I'm sure, has it'd be interesting to see, like, Ajax are over, obviously. Ajax would always be, I suppose, Ajax would be seen as the purest of the elite clubs. They all produce their own players and all these great players. Well, I'm sure I'm going to make a mistake here now, but where Van Basten and Rijkaard, they all came from Ajax. I think Hullet didn't come from Ajax, if I'm right. But they all came, and they like had big names in European clubs, but ultimately they came through a very successful Ajax.
No, well, Hullet started out, was discovered at Haarlem. Hullet. Van Basten, of course, born in Utrecht, and our friend Dennis Bergkamp, who, if it wasn't for football, would have ended up being a physiotherapist. Not many people know that. He actually started his training to be a physiotherapist, and he himself thought that he could combine physiotherapy with professional football, but he realised that he couldn't. And it just goes to show, in my opinion, the greatest Arsenal player there's ever been. And then the Eredivisie gets a bad rep, but as someone who's watched it firsthand for more than 15 years, it's an acquired taste. But obviously here in the Netherlands, all professional clubs have to hand in their books to the Dutch FA. If they find out you've been spending beyond your means, you receive sanctions, which can range from fines to points deductions to your professional license being revoked. And you imagine that happening in the Premier League. And I think for Newcastle, what we've discussed tonight, you can go off in so many different themes where I, as a football fan, the English Football Division 1 and Premier League is the league of my country, is the league of my birth. But I'm becoming more and more attracted to La Liga. Obviously, I have family living in Spain. Spain is now a part of my life. But I find myself watching more and more La Liga games. I've obviously my own intrigue with professional players and managers at all levels of world football, to the geographical sense as well, to know that Braga and Guimarães in Portugal are two of the teams that have made the most progress. You know, there's so much more to learn. I'll leave viewers tonight with one final thought from me, where football is bigger and will always be bigger than however big the Premier League might be. It's a huge world out there. And if you want to take time to look at the Eredivisie, to look at La Liga Sagres, to look at La Liga, there's nobody stopping you. There's nobody stopping you. It's a huge world out there. And, you know, I worry about the closed shop of English football. But tonight it's been a pleasure, guys. Really enjoyed it. And I look forward to next time.
And do you mind if I just close the lid on the Pandora box story, which you may or may not know? When Pandora realised what she'd done and she'd released these flying insects of pain and pandemic and so on, she finally closed the lid, and one was kept inside. And you know the one that stayed inside?
Greed.
This is a good one. Hope.
Oh!
Yeah.
Great.
The only one we've got left at the moment, because of the way things are going in the EPL. Hope is still
But I still think, and I'm saying this, I was on with you, Alex, there about a month ago, and we were talking about what do I see in Arsenal, and we had speculation. I saw a lot of grit against Brighton. I saw a clean sheet. I saw a defence that was coming together. You never know. It could be a couple of years before Newcastle. Arsenal could be back on top by then.
Yeah.
It could be Arsenal, Newcastle running for the title in 2026.
I'll second that. Absolutely.
All right, so listen, it's come to an end on this fourth installment of the Canon Project. Wonderful panel, the likely lads all together again in different corners of the face of the earth. Yeah, James just in Amsterdam, just next door to me. Tell the likely lads just over here in Ireland. But anyway, to all our viewers, I saw numbers just creep over 15 for a Monday evening show. Wonderful stuff over here. Guys, enjoy your evenings. And you have been watching Canon Fodder, the channel for Arsenal fans all.